Chapter 14 Part 1 of How I Found Livingstone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. How I Found Livingstone. Travels, Adventures, and Discoveries in Central Africa, including 4 months' residence with Dr. Livingstone. By Sir Henry M. Stanley. Chapter 14 Part 1 Our Journey from Ujiji to Unyanyembe. We felt quite at home when we sat down on our black bearskin, gay Persian carpet and clean new mats, to rest with our backs to the wall, sipping our tea with the air of comfortable men, and chat over the incidents of the picnic, as Livingstone persisted in calling our journey to the Rusizi. It seemed as if old times, which we loved to recall, had come back again, though our house was humble enough in its aspect, and our servants were only naked barbarians. But it was near this house that I had met him, Livingstone, after that eventful march from Unyanyembe. It was on this same veranda that I listened to that wonderful story of his about those far, enchanting regions west of the Lake Tanganyika. It was in this same spot that I first became acquainted with him, and ever since my admiration has been growing for him, and I feel elated when he informs me that he must go to Unyanyembe under my escort and at my expense. The old mud walls, and the bare rafters, and the ancient thatched roof, and this queer-looking old veranda, will have an historical interest for me while I live, and so, while I can, I have taken pains and immortalized the humble old building by a sketch. I have just said that my admiration for Livingstone has been growing. This is true. The man that I was about to interview so calmly and complacently, as I would interview any prominent man with the view of specially delineating his nature or detailing his opinions, has conquered me. I had intended to interview him, report in detail what he said, picture his life and his figure, then bow him in my au revoir and march back. That he was specially disagreeable and brusque in his manner, which would make me quarrel with him immediately, was firmly fixed in my mind. But Livingstone, true, noble, Christian, generous-hearted, frank man, acted like a hero, invited me to his house, said he was glad to see me, and got well on purpose to prove the truth of his statement, "You have brought new life unto me," and when I fell sick with the remittent fever, hovering between life and death, he attended me like a father, and we have now been together for more than a month. Can you wonder, then, that I like this man, whose face is the reflex of his nature, whose heart is essentially all goodness, whose aims are so high, that I break out impetuously sometimes, "But your family, Doctor! They would like to see you, oh, so much! Let me tempt you to come home with me. I promise to carry you every foot of the way to the coast. You shall have the finest donkey to ride that is in Unyanyembe. Your wants, you have but to hint them, and they shall be satisfied. Let the sources of the Nile go. Do you come home and rest, then, after a year's rest and restored health, you can return and finish what you have to do." But ever the answer was, "No, I should like to see my family very much indeed. My children's letters affect me intensely, but I must not go home. I must finish my task. It is only the want of supplies that has detained me. I should have finished the discovery of the Nile by tracing to its connection with either Baker's Lake or Petherick's branch of the Nile. If I had only gone 1 month further, I could have said, 'The work is done.'" Some of these men who had turned the doctor back from his interesting discoveries were yet in Ujiji, and had the government Enfield rifles in their hands, which they intended to retain until their wages had been paid to them, but as they had received $60 advance each at Zanzibar from the English consul, with the understanding entered into by contract that they should follow their master wherever he required them to go, and as they had not only gone where they were required to proceed with him, but had baffled and thwarted him, it was preposterous that a few men should triumph over the doctor, by keeping the arms given to him by the Bombay government. I had listened to the Arab sheikhs, friends of the doctor, advising them in mild tones to give them up. I had witnessed the mutineers' stubbornness, and it was then, on the Berzani of Said bin Majid's house, that I took advantage to open my mind on the subject, not only for the benefit of the stubborn slaves, but also for the benefit of the Arabs, and to tell them that it was well that I had found Livingstone alive, for if they had but injured a hair of his head, I should have gone back to the coast, to return with a party which would enable me to avenge him. I had been waiting to see Livingstone's guns returned to him every day, hoping that I should not have to use force, but when a month or more had elapsed, and still the arms had not been returned, I applied for permission to take them, which was granted. Susie, the gallant servant of Dr. Livingstone, was immediately dispatched with about a dozen armed men to recover them, and in a few minutes we had possession of them without further trouble. The doctor had resolved to accompany me to Unyanyembe, in order to meet his stores, which had been forwarded from Zanzibar, November 1st, 1870. As I had charge of the escort, it was my duty to study well the several routes to Unyanyembe from Ujiji. I was sufficiently aware of the difficulties and the responsibilities attached to me while escorting such a man. Besides, my own personal feelings were involved in the case. If Livingstone came to any harm through any indiscretion of mine while he was with me, it would immediately be said, "Ah, had he not accompanied Stanley, he would have been alive now." I took out my chart, the one I had made myself, in which I had perfect faith, and I sketched out a route which would enable us to reach Unyanyembe without paying a single cloth as tribute, and without encountering any worse thing than a jungle, by which we could avoid all the Wavinza and the plundering Wahha. This peaceable, secure route led by water south along the coast of Ukaranga and Ukawendi to Cape Tongwe. Arriving at Cape Tongwe, I should be opposite the village of Itaga, Sultan Imrera, in the district of Rusawa of Ukawende, after which we should strike my old road, which I had traversed from Unyanyembe when bound for Ujiji. I explained it to the doctor, and he instantly recognized its feasibility and security, and if I struck Imrera, as I proposed to do, it would demonstrate whether my chart was correct or not. We arrived at Ujiji from our tour of discovery, north of the Tanganyika, December 13th, and from this date the doctor commenced writing his letters to his numerous friends, and to copy into his mammoth Let's diary, from his field books, the valuable information he had acquired during his years of travel south and west of the Tanganyika. I sketched him while sitting in his shirt sleeves in the veranda, with his Let's diary on his knee, and the likeness on the frontispiece is an admirable portrait of him, because the artist who has assisted me has with an intuitive eye seen the defects in my own sketch, and by this I am enabled to restore him to the reader's view exactly as I saw him, as he pondered on what he had witnessed during his long marches. Soon after my arrival at Ujiji he had rushed to his paper, and indebted a letter to James Gordon Bennett, Esquire, wherein he recorded his thanks, and after he had finished it, I asked him to add the word Junior to it, as it was young Mr. Bennett to whom he was indebted. I thought the letter admirable, and requested the doctor not to add another word to it. The feelings of his heart had found expression in the grateful words he had written, and if I judged Mr. Bennett rightly, I knew he would be satisfied with it. For it was not the geographical news he cared so much about, as the grand fact of Livingstone's being alive or dead. In this latter part of December he was writing letters to his children, Sir Roderick Murchison, and to Lord Granville. He had intended to have written to the Earl of Clarendon, but it was my sad task to inform him of the death of that distinguished nobleman. In the meantime I was preparing the expedition for its return march to Unyanyembe, apportioning the bales and luggage, the doctor's large tin boxes, and my own among my men, for I had resolved upon permitting the doctor's men to march as passengers, because they had so nobly performed their duty to their master. Said bin Majid had left, December 12th, for Mirambo's country, so to give the Black Bonaparte battle for the murder of his son Saoud in the forests of Wilyankura, and he had taken with him 300 stout fellows, armed with guns, from Ujiji. The stout-hearted old chief was burning with rage and resentment, and a fine warlike figure he made with his 7-foot gun. Before we departed for the Rusizi I had wished him bon voyage, and expressed a hope that he would rid the Central African world of the tyrant Mirambo. On the 20th of December the rainy season was ushered in with heavy rain, thunder, lightning, and hail, the thermometer falling to 66° Fahrenheit. The evening of this day I was attacked with urticaria, or nettle rash, for the third